Mr. Stained Glass again with a holiday theme project this time. And this one has a couple of special things about it that I think you're going to be interested in. So stay until the end to see what those are. It's going to be this poinsettia right here. And these are the colors we're using. So we're going to get started cutting this. What we're going to do is we're going to do the middle as this circle. So what I'm going to do first, of course we have a glass cutter. I want to make sure it's oiled up. And so we're going to start by cutting a little piece off for this circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the cutter along that edge. Now when you're cutting, what it does is it creates a score in the glass. That's where we're going to break it through. So what I normally do is I'll just tap it right on there and it will pop right off. Now the circles are a little bit tricky. You've got a bunch of curved edges. Now another thing we want to talk about is that this glass is a water glass. It's got a little bit of a texture. Let's see if we can see that. So see all that? It's got a little bit of a texture and it's directional. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually want to mark it this way so we know which direction that's going. So this is going to be going this way, and we're going to want that to be vertical on this circle. So that's why we want to kind of pay attention to that detail. So we're going to be cutting right on that black line, and all of these will be coming with a second pattern so that you can cut one out if you want and trace them. But normally I just like to try to cut right on that black line. And so that's going to be pretty good. Now this is a kind of small edges. See if I can break it with my hands. Okay, I was able to break a little bit off. But now we're going to bring out another tool, our grosers. Flat end on top and the curved end on the bottom. Kind of like this. Let's see that again. So we'll put it just outside of the score line. And we can see it even separating if I do it slowly. So what we're going to do, let's see if we can see it separate when I do it slowly. Sure. Okay, now this is a pretty rough cut piece here. So what we are going to do is grind that down. Make sure it's got some water. Now we're just going to smooth all these rough edges out. And there you have it. That's a pretty nice circle. So now you're going to want to sweep off the pattern. Try to keep this glass shards away from you as much as possible. Okay, now we've got a little circular piece cut there. It's not perfect, but it will do. Now we are going to be doing the petal portions, and this part we can still see through, so that's good. And this one we're going to do a little different. Since I want to be able to cut a bunch of these out, I'm going to figure out the best way to do that to get the best yield. Probably I'm going to cut a couple strips like this. Okay, we have our straight edge now, and what we're going to do is measure this out. So this, let's see. In order to cut this piece, we're going to need a piece that's at least 2 inches long. And let's go ahead and put it on there and just check, just to make sure. So 2 inches will be just right. So what we're going to do is cut out one 2-inch strip first, and then another 2-inch strip when we're ready. So I put it up to the very edge right here, and then we can do a little mark on the 2-inch mark. Bring it down, do the same thing on the 2-inch mark. Now this is kind of hard to see. I might need to get a better marker, but I can barely see. You might not be able to see it on camera. What I'll do is I'll set the glass scoring tool with the scoring wheel right on that first line, move the ruler up to it. So I'll move the ruler up to it. Now I know it's oriented correctly for that line. And then I'll do the same for the bottom line. See, I'll put the wheel right on it, move the ruler up to it. Now I know that the ruler is oriented where the glass cutter will cut straight through those 2 lines. So we'll do the nice even score. Normally we'll just use our hands to break it. You just apply even pressure on both sides of that score and it snaps right off. Now we're seeing some little bit of glass. We don't want to get that in our hands if we can avoid it. I want to get the best yield possible. And we're going to try to just cut right on that line. So you're going to have nice even pressure all the way throughout. We're going to go ahead and keep the piece of glass in the exact same spot and score each line as needed. And one thing you're definitely going to want to keep in mind is that this glass has a smooth side and a rough side. So you're going to want to make sure to cut on the smooth side. Let's see if we can see that texture in there. See that? There's all that texture. And see how it's a lot smoother on this side. So you're going to want to cut on the smooth side. It's going to give you the best results. There you go. You can see the score lines right here. So we're going to get the glass cutter, this part of it, and just tap it through. And you can start to see that glass separating right on that score line. That's exactly what you want to see. And just easy as that. Now we'll try to do it on the other side. Sometimes it doesn't work quite as well when there's not enough meat on the glass, but that time it worked out just fine. So we're going to go ahead and tap this one through as well. And then we've got some little bit of a rough edge there. Take your grosiers and see if we can, it's kind of like grinding with these teeth. That's what these are for. So it just gives you a little, takes off most of the meat, and then we'll go to the grinder here in just a little bit, and we will clean up all those rough edges. I'm gonna check the fit. Oh, and we forgot to take off the little part on the bottom. We did score it though. If you look closely, you might be able to see it right there. So we're going to take that part off with the grosiers, and it came out pretty nicely. That was pretty good, so we got good results there. And now this is pretty much what you're going to want the pieces to look like. See that it's pretty much right in the middle of this, of the black lines. Probably what we're going to do is go ahead and set all these pieces up over here to the side as we cut them. And then we're going to take them all to the grinder and grind them at the same time. This glass that we're using for the pedals, it does have a texture, but it's not directional. So we don't necessarily need to worry about which direction each one is facing. Consistent and even pressure. Both sides. And when you're cutting glass, you don't want to stop in the middle. What I mean by that is you don't want to go right here, pick up your cutter, and then try to go back down. It's not really going to work out very good. So you're going to want to keep that consistent score all the way through. We'll get this little bit right here. Break off the smaller pieces first. See that? Sometimes you can get it with just one tap. See that? And then we'll go ahead and do this part next. And I'll do this one a little bit slower. There we go. Now, the reason why I did that one a little bit slower is because there's a little bit more risk of this line breaking out into your workpiece. So you'll be wasting a lot of glass that way. So if you do it a little bit slower, you can kind of work it through, and then it'll separate cleanly like this did. Now we do have a little bit of some jagged edges right here that we're going to want to get off. And we can just kind of grab it like that and just pop it off. And all this stuff right here, we're going to go ahead and grind that off here in a little bit. There we go. Now this one's a little bit rougher. This part didn't break off quite right. There we go. Even that still was not very clean break, so we're going to have to do some grinding there. That's okay. Okay, shake that off a little bit. Now, if you want to see a more in-depth guide over cutting where I go over all the things you need to know about how to cut glass, including tools and techniques and my personal tips, I'll link a video up above to the card. It'll be somewhere over here.
There we go. There we go.
And now we're going to go ahead and do the inside. You can already see that's starting to separate a little bit right there.
A little bit more.
Actually, we forgot to score it right there this time. See, we didn't score it on the bottom. So now we're gonna have to try to line it back up. This is why I like to score them all first before starting to break the pieces off, because it can be a little tricky to try to line it up exactly where it was on the initial score. But I think we can get it. There we go. So there we go. So this is my favorite way to break the glass, only because now you see I'm not having to reach for another tool. Oh look, there's one of those situations where it actually did break through into the workpiece. So remember I said that's why I was taking these a little bit slowly, because I want to avoid it breaking into my workpiece, because now I probably can't use this. So now we'll just clean it up a little bit. Because the more you clean up now, the less you're going to have to grind away. So that'll save you some time. Cut this curve out one more time. There we go. We're going to do 1.5 inches here. You can really see that mark much better now. And we're going to do 1.5 inches here. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plant the glass cutter on the glass, bring the straight edge to the side of the cutter, and then do the same thing on the bottom mark. We've got the ruler oriented to both marks perfectly for the glass cutter. So that's what it should sound like. And then to break it, so before we used our hands, and if you're not really comfortable doing that, that's okay. You can also use your grosers with the flat part on top. And you're just gonna wanna do the same pressure, kind of like you would with your hands anyway. And if you're planning to make a bunch of these, you'll end up getting a good yield no matter what. And we might even get a little bit of a better yield if we did it like this, and then we can cut the other one like that. So let's see how that works out. You're always going to want to try to see how you can get the best yield to waste as little glass as possible. Cut this line. Again, we're still on the smooth side, trying to keep that constant motion and pressure. We don't want to stop in the middle, and we don't want to do too light or too hard, or even varying levels of pressure. We want to kind of keep it a consistent pressure. And whenever you're cutting these curves, it's going to help a lot to turn your elbow. See that it's scored right there. So what we're going to do is actually start our next score for this curve part right at that score. Instead of starting over here and wasting glass, we're going to start it right at that score. So now we're going to break this piece off first, and then we can break that piece off without it breaking this way and wasting a bunch of glass. So let's see what that looks like. Again, just using the trusted glass cutter. So now all this is salvaged. And this part right here, we can just pop right off. Now you'll notice I'm cutting on the smooth side, and then I'm tapping the score through on the rough side from the opposite of the scored side. So that's going to be the best way to get the score to run through the glass. You don't want to be tapping on the same side you scored it. Okay, now we've got one more piece right here. Let's see if we can get it with just the glass cutter. There you go. That's why I like to just tap it with the glass cutter. And then we come back with the grocer, just clean up a couple of these edges. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this one first. And this is a review from the last piece. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one this way. And this is kind of tight right here. We might have to clean that up with the grinder, but that's okay. Now this is a review from last time. Remember, we just scored it like this, so now I'm gonna start it right at that score and just do this curve part. Okay, now we're gonna start with this longer score, separate that piece. And now we're gonna tap this one through. This one might, see, it's a little bit of not very much meat between the edge and the score line. That's when you really need to use the grosers, or else you'll kind of end up breaking your glass in a weird way. There we go, that's exactly what you want to see. Might have to grind down a little piece. Now, when I already have the grosers in my hand, I'm gonna go ahead and just finish breaking the glass apart with the grosers since I already picked it up. And that had a little bit of a rough edge, so I just smoothed it down with the curved jaw. That's a good way to almost light grinding, but not as neat. It's mostly meant for the big areas that need a lot of work. so you don't have to spend a lot of time with the grinder. Okay, so now we've pretty much got all of our pieces cut, and you can see we've got quite a bit of shards everywhere. So what we're gonna do is take all these pieces to the grinder, and we already did the circle, but we're gonna do all the red pieces, because if you look closely, you see how they have these kind of sharp edges. We're gonna wanna get those to be nice and smooth. That's gonna give us the best results. Here's one that still needs to be done. See all the sharp edges? We're gonna smooth those out. There we go, all smoothed out. We're going to put down our pattern. We're going to start drying these off one by one. And we're going to make sure to try to clean the edges, because that's where we've got a lot of that grinder dust from, you know, the gloss dust. So we're going to want to make sure that these edges are nice and clean for when we go to apply that copper foil. And all the pieces on this pattern are the same, so as long as you're pretty close with your cuts, it doesn't really matter which slot each of these pieces go in. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll hold it right in the center, because that's not where the copper foil will be adhered to. And you're going to want to make sure all the texture is on the same side. So I'm putting the rough side down, since that's the way that I cut them. And I'm putting the smooth side up. That's just going to keep it as consistent as possible. And if you do touch the edges a little bit, it's not a huge deal. Just want to try not to touch it too much, especially if you've got really sweaty hands. Then it might become a problem. Now we just have one last one right in the middle. A little bit of gaps here and there, but nothing a little bit of solder can't fill. I think maybe if I cut that circle just a little bit bigger, it would have worked out a little bit better, but I think this is gonna actually work out really good. Okay, now we've got the pieces all cleaned up, and we're gonna start copper foiling. And right here, I've got my little jig set up. Really all you do is push the foil down through this part, and you keep curling it around it, and that's how we apply it. So really all it is the creator's foiler with a C-clamp, clamped to the table, and then over here we've got our little caddy with the foil. I was touching this foil just a little bit, so I'm gonna pull a little bit out, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off. Pull this through. I try to hold it right in the middle, not on the sides. And what I'll do is, actually what I'm going to do is pull it back, because we don't need it to be out that much. It's not really usable when it's out. So all you do is you push the piece into it, and you just feed it through with constant pressure. And you just bend it around. It's got a little bearing in there. And you just keep pushing this glass against that bearing with consistent pressure. And you just keep rotating the glass. And I'll take my index finger on the bottom side, and I'll just try to push that foil a little bit better into the glass as I am feeding it through the foiler. Okay, we've got the first part done. We're going to cut that down. We're just going to finish that off right here. And now what I like to do is I like to fold it down with my fingers for now. So I'll fold it down up to the corner, and then I'll fold that over. Oops. And then I'll fold it down up to the corner, and then I'll fold that corner over like this. So I'll zip it up, fold it down, zip it up, and then fold it down. And then we're gonna come back, I'm gonna go ahead and foil all the pieces, And you can see this is a pretty even foil, and it's really quick, pretty inexpensive. This is my favorite method to foiling. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the next piece. Got my fingers on the center faces of the glass as much as possible. Finish that fold over. Now we're just going to fold it with our fingers, just like before. I like this technique because, to me, it saves a ton of time, and you get a great result, maybe even a more consistent result from hand foiling it. Everything is going to have a little bit of a learning curve, but if you're learning something that's going to be a little more efficient from the beginning, at least you'll be, to me, a little bit ahead of the game instead of learning, you know, the hand foil way. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn that. I think you should, but I just think that this way is a little more efficient, and so if you can be a little more efficient, then why not? The only thing is it does require a little bit of a setup, whereas the hand foiling, you can just pick up any roll and just start, you know, immediately. Oops, had a little bit of a tear there. Now, if you have a tear, what I'll normally do is I'll go ahead and fold everything over like normal, and we're just going to run this piece right back through that foiler. You're going to see what that looks like here in just a moment. And what I'll do is I'll overlay it maybe about 1/4 inch on both sides at least. So since this got damaged, I'm going to pull it out just a little bit, cut it down, and then we're going to go ahead and push this through just like before. There we go. And then we're going to fold that over, fold that over. And so we've got a little bit of a misalignment. I'm going to show you how to fix that later because you don't really want that in your finished product. And the other thing I really like about this little setup, copper foiling setup, is that you can do pretty much any shape. It's really works out good. So this one, I'm just rolling it through there. Just cut that down. Right here is our overlap. I'm just going to start from one of those sides. And so I did forget to mention, we're using a copper foil, and it's got a silver backing, which means when you look through the glass, you might be able to see it, and for sure you'll see it if I pull this out just a little bit more. There we go. See, it's got a little bit of a silver backing. So what we're going to be doing is using this with unpatinaed solder. That is going to have a silvery finish. So in case you can't ever see through the glass to the adhesive edge of the copper foil, it'll look silver and it'll match the finish of the solder. So that's what you want. If you were planning to patina this black, you would want to use a black backing. That's going to be the best option to cover, just in case you do see through any sort of transparent glass. And all the glass we are using is transparent. Now, it's not a clear, it is colored, so it'll be kind of hard to see through there. But if you were using, let's just say, a bare copper back, that's a very shiny material, and you're going to be able to really tell if you're using transparent glass. See right here, this is that silver backing that I'm talking about. You can really see it before you fold it over. Since this is a red gloss, when you look through it, you really can't see that silver too much. Maybe in the right lightings you might be able to, but it's just a best practice. Whatever solder finish you're going to use the same finish of the backing of your copper foil. They're all foiled and folded, but we need to burnish them. See how there's a lot of texture, especially in this one, you can really tell. See all that? That's going to come through in your solder. And we want to make sure that this adhesive is sticking to the face of the glass as much as possible. See how it's still sticking up just a little bit? Even if you can't see it, if you haven't burnished it, it's sticking up. So we're going to need to make sure to burnish these. Okay, now this is my favorite fid to use, and burnishing is really simple. All you have to do is apply pressure, and you're trying to smooth out all this foil. Now you want to be careful. See, it looks like so you want to make sure to apply pressure in towards the center. If you don't, you're going to get some little rips. See right here? So make sure to apply in towards the center. Apply the pressure in towards the center. And enough to flatten it, but not so much that you're going to start ripping the foil. And you're going to want to make sure it's nice and smooth. And if we do rip it in some areas, we can go ahead and reapply it. So what I'm going to do is try to remove that portion. And this is when an X-Acto blade is very handy to do any of these sort of really fine adjustments. So here we go. Make sure everything is burnished to the inside. Nice and flat. I want to make sure all of that adhesive adheres to the surface of the glass. You're going to want to make sure to do the edges as well. And in fact, you're probably going to want to do the edges first. That's going to be because you don't want to get any air trapped in there if you do both faces first. So you're going to want to try to do the edges first, push the air out to the faces, and then from the faces, push it out over onto the glass edge. So that's the first one done. We're going to keep the done ones over here, and we're going to keep moving right along. So we're going to start with the edge. And you're going to want to try to be mindful of the very first place where the place where we ended it, because you're going to have a little bit of foil sticking up on the edge. That's just the way it is. So you don't want to knock that off, per se. You want to keep that adhered well to the edge. Okay. Now we're just going to burnish down again. And right here is something that we do need to be mindful of. You see this spot, how it's a little bit uneven? We're going to want to cut that with an X-Acto blade to smooth out that transition. So we're going to look at that towards right before when we solder. We're going to finish burnishing, and then we're going to take care of all of those. And if you are enjoying this, I would appreciate it if you would leave me a like down below, and let me know if there is something specifically that I might have left out on the cutting phase that you do at home. Now, as far as burnishing, I have seen some people, they'll use markers or other, there's different things you can do. I just personally like this tool the most. It has a nice flat edge and a curved edge. So I just feel like in some places I'll want to use the curved edge and others the flat edge. Looking out for that termination point. See, right here is where it is. So I don't want to be knocking that up. I want to make sure to push it down, because it sticks up just barely above the surface of the rest of the foil. So it's just a perfect place to knock it off. We're going to keep foiling, keep burnishing in towards the center. And you'll notice this glass has actually a pretty mild texture, and some glasses have a really heavy texture, and it's much more difficult to foil. And if that is the case, what you're going to want to maybe consider doing is getting a grinder bit that it almost bevels the edge and makes it a consistent surface instead of all that ripply texture. So if you are dealing with a texture that you really want to use and you're having a hard time, check out that grinding bit that I'm talking about. And I'll leave if you check out the copper foiling video, I do have a section in there where I go over that. So that would be where you could check that part out. I'll link that up on the screen right now, right here. And right here we're seeing, looks like this part doesn't have any foil on the surface. So we're going to need to do a little patch right there. What I'm going to do is burnish everything down first, and then we're going to go back and patch that up. Burnish everything in towards the center. This right here is what that looks like. We've got some on there. We're going to fold it over. Make sure it's folded on both sides. Zip it up, fold it over, and now we burnish. going in towards the center. And these circles, it's all curved edge. So this foil really tends to almost crimp up into little ridges, and you're gonna need to really fold these over. Okay, now we've got all of our pieces. They are cut and burnished. And now we need to inspect them before soldering, just to make sure that there's no imperfections that's gonna show through to the solder. So we're gonna grab an X-Acto blade and get started with that. Okay, so I can't find my X-Acto blade, but really any blade or knife will pretty much work. So what we're doing is we're going through and we're gonna smooth out things like that. We do not want that to be in our finished solder work. So we're just gonna cut that out. And now we're gonna see what it looks like after that's been done. See that? A nice smooth transition. So there we have it. I would say that this side is ready to be soldered. Now to solder, we're of course going to need a soldering iron. And we like this Hakko because it's got the temperature control right on the handle. And we also have our fume extractor. So this is gonna suck all the fumes in and filter out that air. And I am also going to be wearing an N95 mask. Now for this step, I like to have a couple things other than just the soldering iron. We also need flux. We're going to be using 97.3 lead-free solder, flux brush, and we're going to be needing some wire, and we'll see why in just a few moments. First thing that we need to also do is secure this panel so it doesn't move around on us. And we're going to do that using some nails. We have our mallet, and we've got a few nails, and we're going to start securing them from one edge first. Now you're going to want to be careful not to damage your glass. And we really don't need to drive these nails in too far. We just need to do so enough to keep everything secure. And we're going to be doing a tack soldering. So that is really going to also help keep this panel from moving around. So we got our mask on and we are going to get our flux out. And what I like to do is just pour a little bit into the cap. Just like that. And move this bottle of flux away from you because you don't want to be knocking that over. Oh, one other thing is that we need to plug in the iron. So we're going to leave the brush right at the cap. Okay, now we've got our iron getting hot. See, it's on there. We're going to apply flux just at the corners where each piece meets up. So something like right here, and it doesn't take much. And your pieces may move around a little bit, just move them back. And if you want to, you can secure them down a little bit better with a couple more nails. We want to try to mimic the pattern as much as possible because the pattern is symmetrical. So the closer you are to it, the better overall product you're going to have. There we go. See, it's starting to heat up pretty good. Tack soldering is when you solder individual joints, and that's just going to make it all hold together. There you go. See, just like that. Another joint soldered here. And you're gonna see how strong this thing has become after just a few joints being soldered. So I'm keeping this iron. It's on 460 degrees. And now that we have just this part soldered, let's see how strong it is. We're going to take out the nails. And you see how it's holding together. So that's why we like to tack solder, because now you're going to have a panel holding together and the pieces aren't going to be moving when you're trying to solder them. We don't really need this pattern anymore. And now we're going to go ahead and flux up the rest of the piece. And what I like to do is I like to just feed the solder into the tip, and that will melt it, and it'll kind of run and adhere to the copper foil. Now you want it to be a pretty clean run. You don't want it to be really jagged. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on. And for lead-free solder, I actually like to keep the iron a little bit hotter at the 540 setting. Now the first pass is normally not the cleanest pass, and that's okay, we can always go back over it. Now these edges, we're going to go ahead and tin them, and that just means we're running that solder over them to silver them up, and we're going to do some edge beading. That'll be here in a few minutes. So what I'll do is I'll just grab a little bit of solder with the iron. I call it loading the tip, or loading the iron, and then just feed it onto the foil. And all this foil has been flux, that's why it's pretty much sticking instantly. So now that everything has got the first coat, you can see this area looks good, but this area is pretty rough. So we're going to go over all those areas first. What I like to do is I like to just apply a little bit more flux. It seems to just make things flow a little bit easier. And now you can really see a lot of those fumes popping off. That's why we do that. That's why we have this extractor. See all that? Having a lot of flux really just makes it flow good. And now that we have the first side done, we're going to go ahead and flip it and do the exact same thing. So we're just going to put a bunch of flux on there. And this glass is hot because it's already soldered on the other side. That's why you see the fumes coming up. And for lead-free solder, sometimes I like to use a different iron that's a little more powerful. And I just find that it helps it to flow much better. The smaller iron, it's good for the 50-50 or the 60-40, but lead-free needs a little bit of a higher melting temperature to flow nicely. And that's why I like to use this Weller. It's a 100-watt iron instead of the smaller Hackle iron. And you can already just see the difference with how easily this solder is flowing. And this iron worked out so much better than the other one. I'm going to go ahead and go over the back side again. And this thing is hot, so might not be a bad idea to invest in some heat-resistant gloves. So, go ahead and run over this. And what I'm going to do is flux it up one last time. And that'll just help the solder really flow well. And that's how you want to do that. So that was a nice lead-free solder bead. I was able to get the whole thing in molten state. And it really smoothed out. And that's why it's got some nice smooth edges and it's not so beady like it was before. Okay, so now that we have done the faces, we need to take care of these edges. See all that copper? So, I like to grab a couple pieces of scrap 2x material, and I like to smush these panels like this instead of holding with my hands, because if the solder drips, it will hurt. And we can very easily flux these and solder them. Now, of course, we are fighting gravity here, so what we have to do is do the surface that's going to be the easiest with the way the orientation is. So we're very able to easily do that side, but if I want to do this side, watch what happens. See, it just starts to run straight down because of gravity. So, all we have to do is rotate it. Put a nice healthy bead on there. You don't want it to drip up too thick like that. Yeah, that is, you don't want it to be dripped up right there too thick. So we can take care of that when we lay it flat. Right now we're trying to cover up all these exposed copper edges. So just keep rolling it over. And then we'll roll it over. Now you're going to notice right here, I did build up these two corners, and the reason why is because there was a little split in the foil, and I'm trying to make sure to encompass all of that in solder. So we're going to see if we can smooth all that out, but still keep that covered with solder. We've got these two really built up corners that we need to take care of. We'll flip this over. Now this corner still needs a little bit of attention. See, there's a little bit of exposed glass there. Everything else looks really good. Okay, so we're going to try to make a little ring that we can solder on here. Something like how we have it on this pattern. See that? So we're going to curl this up. And we'll see if this is going to be enough. Do you see how we have this shape now? So I'm going to try to do something like this. And I actually want to do more wire because I want that to go all the way to there. So we're going to cut another longer piece. Do the same thing. Just curl it up. And so now we have a little bit of a ring type of situation. But we have enough surface right here where it's going to really be adhered. And that is really what you want. You don't want this to be failing in the future. So what we're going to do is, now that I've got a nice long piece here, I'm going to cut that down. And I'm going to cut it down right here. And between all of this long length, that will pretty much hold this thing. I'm not worried about it. So what I'd recommend is to put it into the wood like we did before and just start with one side. So we're going to start it kind of like this right here. And I'm going to just put one finger right here. Probably not the best idea, but that's what we're going to try to do. And if you want, you can maybe put a piece of tape if you want to try to avoid a little burning sensation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of solder with the iron, and I'm just going to try to tack solder this thing on there. Whew, that thing got hot quickly. It wasn't even the... I think it was just maybe some flux that rolled down and got me. Not too bad though. Okay, so now, look. Now it's secured, so that's good. Let's do the other side too now. And I think this time I'm going to be a little smarter. I think I'm going to use this thing to hold it down. Flex that up just a little bit. Oh yeah, be careful not to put your hot iron on the wood. Could start a fire. It's very hot. And we still have the iron loaded a little bit from before. And if we want, I can just grab a little bit more. There we go. Now we've got this thing submerged in the solder. We have the wire submerged in the solder. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to fold it over and down. And we're going to submerge this part next. There we go, just like that. Grab a little bit more with your iron. Submerge it. And now we're going to try to really just make this a little bit neater. So we're just going to kind of push it down into the surface of the glass. Pushing it down to the edge. There we go. So that's pretty neat. See that? We can smooth all this out a little bit. Careful not to burn your hands, please. And see that? That's pretty nice and smooth, and that is pretty much one with the glass now. So now we have to do the other side. Exact same process. Secure it up. Your 2 pieces of wood. Just feed a little bit of solder onto there, and I just push the wire into place, kind of in the orientation that I want it to be, and I just push that down with the iron. Now the iron is hot, so it keeps the solder molten. If I remove the iron and push it down with something else, it's going to dry in the place that I want it to be. So there we go. Now this thing is pretty much one with the glass on this side. I'm just going to feed a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And there you have it. So now I just need to smooth this out a little bit. We'll do one last run here. Get everything nice and molten and smoothed out. And there you have it. I've got a nice little ring. That thing is secure. It is very hot. Whew. Go ahead and use your favorite blue glass cleaner. Sure, we've all got one. This thing is extremely hot. Okay, we just got the poinsettia all finished up, and it's cleaned up and in the window. Let's check it out. I think I'm gonna go home and put this on my Christmas tree. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I think you're gonna enjoy these holiday videos too. So thanks for watching. See you next time.